sekolah.
Selamat pagi dan selamat datang para hadirin sekalian. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. Greetings and well wishes to everyone.
Sebelumnya, perkenalkan saya Faron Ramadan. Berdiri di sini dengan rasa hormat dan senang bisa berdiri di hadapan para hadirin sekalian sebagai pembawa acara pada pagi hari ini.
My name is Aiko Indilatifa, and I am so honored and glad to be standing in front of you as the Master of Ceremonies of today's event.
Yang terhormat, Dr. Insinyur Iwan Taruna, MH, IPM, selaku Rektor Universitas Jember.
The Honorable Dr. and Engineer, Magister of Engineering, Professional Engineer, and also the Head of the Rector of Jember University, Mr. Iwan Taruna.
Yang kami hormati, Bapak Dr. Insinyur Tri Wahyu Hardianto, STMT IPM, selaku Dekan Fakultas Teknik Universitas Jember.
The Honorable Dr. and Engineer, Bachelor of Engineering, Master of Engineering, Professional Engineer, and serve as the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Jember University, Mr. Tri Wahyu Hardianto.
Yang kami hormati, para Wakil Dekan Fakultas Teknik Universitas Jember.
The Honorable Deputy Dean of Jember University.
Yang kami hormati, Profesor Claudio Castellini, PhD, selaku pemateri yang akan menginspirasi para hadirin sekalian.
The Honorable Professor Doctor of Philosophy, Mr. Claudio Castellini, as today's speaker.
Yang kami hormati, Insinyur Khairul Anam, STMT PhD IPM, selaku Ketua Pelaksana kegiatan hari ini.
The Honorable Engineer, Bachelor of Engineering, Master of Engineering, Doctor of Philosophy, Professional Engineer, and Chief Executive of today's event, Mr. Khairul Anam.
Yang kami hormati, Dr. Muhammad Agung Prawira Negara, STMT, selaku moderator yang memimpin jalannya diskusi.
The Honorable Dr. Bachelor of Engineering, Master of Engineering, Mr. Muhammad Agung Prawira Negara as moderator for today's event.
Dan yang kami hormati, para dosen dan para mahasiswa Universitas Jember.
And the Honorable Lecturers and Student, University of Jember.
Pertama-tama, mari kita panjatkan puja dan puji syukur kepada Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, yang telah melimpahkan rahmat dan hidayahnya kepada kita semua, sehingga kita bisa berkumpul di acara pada pagi hari ini.
First, let us express our gratitude to the Almighty God for blessing us with the opportunity to gather here this morning.
Dalam rangka meningkatkan daya saing akademisi di institusi pendidikan di Indonesia, pemerintah melalui Kementerian Pendidikan, Kebudayaan, Riset, dan Teknologi dengan bangga mengadakan program World Class Professor yang mengundang profesor kelas dunia untuk memberikan kuliah dan berbagi pengetahuan kepada para akademisi di Indonesia dengan membawakan materi bertema kecerdasan buatan dan penerapannya di bidang kesehatan.
To boost academic competitiveness in Indonesian institutions, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology proudly introduces the World Class Professor Program. This initiative invites global professors to share insight on artificial intelligence and its application in healthcare with local academics.
Mengawali acara, lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya dan himne Universitas Jember. Hadirin sekalian, diharapkan untuk berdiri.
The next session is the singing of the national anthem Indonesia Raya and the university anthem Himne Universitas Jember. We kindly ask all attendees to stand.
Hadirin dipersilakan duduk kembali.
Thank you. You may now take your seats.
Acara selanjutnya adalah raporan PIC oleh Bapak Khairul Anam, STMT PhD IPM Asian Angst. Kepada Bapak Khairul Anam, dipersilakan untuk melakukan laporan PIC.
Alright, moving on the next segment, the speeches. The first speech will be delivered by Mr. Khairul Anam. We kindly invite Mr. Khairul Anam to deliver his speech.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, dear Honorable Rector of Universitas Jember, Bapak Dr. Insinyur Iwan Taruna M.Eng IPM, Honorable Dean, Dean of Faculty of Engineering, Dean of Faculty of Agricultural Engineering, Dean of Faculty of Medicine, Dean of Faculty of Public Health, Dean of Faculty of Science and Mathematics, and also Vice Dean of Faculty of Engineering, and also our respected special guest, Professor Claudio Castellini, and also our respected colleagues, lecturers and researchers at Universitas Jember, and also all respected guests attending this event online and offline. Good morning and welcome to this auspicious occasion as we gather here to house our distinguished guest, Professor Claudio Castellini, for a guest lecture in the World Class Professor Program 2023. This program, it is with great humility that I extend a warm welcome to all of you. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the Directorate of Resources, Ministry of Education, Culture and Research and Technology of Republic of Indonesia for their generous support which has allowed us to carry out this program. In this program, we have some activities designed to enhance the quality of higher education at Universitas Jember. First, we have guest lectures like the one we are attending today. And also, Prof. Claudio will be giving a lecture in the class on 3 subjects in the electrical engineering department as part of the team teaching. This event provides a remarkable opportunity for us to listen to the insights and knowledge of internationally esteemed expert Professor Claudio Castellini. Second, we engage in collaborative research and publication activities as well as community services. Through collaboration and joint research, we aim to generate valuable knowledge that will contribute to the advancement of science and technology in Indonesia. Third, we also conduct joint supervision for thesis and final project of master and undergraduate students at the electrical engineering department. In this effort, we strive to create supportive and motivating environment for students to excel in their studies. Lastly, we will visit the partner institution, which is Ganesha Education University in Bali, which will allow us to expand our networks and cooperation in higher education. Before we proceed further, I would like to take a moment to express our sincere thanks to the Rector of Universitas Jember for his support and cooperation in making this event possible. I kindly request that the Rector grace us with his presence and officially open this event. Therefore, today marks an exciting beginning for the World Class Professor 2023 program. Professor Claudio Castellini, we are deeply grateful for your presence here, and we eagerly look forward to your lecture. May this event provide valuable insights and inspiration for us all. Once again, thank you all parties who have supported and participate in this program. Let us work together to enhance the quality of higher education in our university and also in Indonesia. Thank you, and please enjoy this guest lecture. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Khairul Anam.
Thank you, Mr. Hairul Ana.
Selanjutnya, sambutan akan disampaikan oleh Dr. Insinyur Tri Wahyu Hardianto, STMT IPM, selaku Dekan Fakultas Teknik. Kepada Bapak Tri Wahyu Hardianto dipersilakan untuk memberikan sambutan.
The following speech will be presented by Mr. Tri Wahyu Hardianto. We invite Mr. Tri Wahyu Hardianto to deliver his speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, the Honorable Bapak Rektor Universitas Jember, the Honorable Professor Claudio Castellini from the Assistive Intelligent Robotics Aerob Laboratory, Friedrich Alexander Universitas Erlangen Nuremberg. Welcome to Universitas Jember. And the Honorable, our college Dean, Head of Department, Head of Study Program, and Head of Laboratory, the Honorable, all of lecturers and students of the Faculty of Engineering, and also from faculties in Universitas Jember, and the Honorable all of invited participants. First of all, let us give thanks to God Almighty, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, who has given us mercy and blessing so we can meet together in health condition. Ladies and gentlemen, and all of participants in this era of progress and development of science and technology, which is very quickly and has directly influenced people's life, higher education has a very important role in providing quality human resources that are able to compete globally. For this reason, Faculty of Engineering, Universitas Jember really need quality education who continuously improve competence for educators and also for students. So this morning in the program of World Class Professor, we have a golden opportunity to attend guest lecture with Professor Claudio Castellini. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Professor Claudio, attend to our university and to provide your experience and share your knowledge to our students, lecturers, and all participants. Terima kasih kepada Pak Rektor yang telah berkenan memberikan support kepada kami semua, dan juga kepada adik-adik mahasiswa dan juga teman-teman fakultas, dan juga kepada adik-adik mahasiswa. Buatlah kuliah tamu ini sebagai kesempatan emas untuk bertanya apa saja tentang artificial intelligence tersebut. Anda bisa bertanya di sektor industri, apa manfaat dan aplikasinya, tidak hanya di sektor kesehatan, sosial juga bisa Anda tanyakan, mungkin apa saja bisa Anda tanyakan. Anda bisa bertanya dan kenalkan diri Anda, siapa tahu adik-adik mahasiswa khususnya akan memiliki kesempatan ke Jerman. Karena Anda sudah dekat, Anda kenal langsung dengan Profesor Claudio, sehingga kesempatan ini adalah kesempatan emas dan belajar menambah pengalaman Anda. Siapa tahu Anda bisa ke Jerman nantinya. Amin gitu ya, adik-adik ya. And so at the end of my speech, of course, I hope that this guest lecture will be useful for all of us and our institution. Thank you very much and good morning. Enjoy your guest lecture. Selamat mengikuti kuliah tamu. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Tri Wahyu Hardianto.
Thank you, Mr. Tri Wahyu Hardianto.
Sambutan terakhir yaitu Rektor Universitas Jember, sekaligus membuka acara secara resmi, kepada Dr. Insinyur Iwan Taruna, MH IPM, dipersilahkan.
The final speech, I would like to invite the head of the Rector of Jember University, Mr. Iwan Taruna, to deliver an opening remark. To Mr. Iwan Taruna, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, faculty member, all the deans from the Universitas Jember, professor, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. Alhamdulillah, wa syukurillah for the blessing and mercy of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala today, so that we can gather here in very good health, and of course to join the guest lecture that will be carried by the Professor Castillo from German, that will, how to say, bring the topic about an artificial intelligence on its application in the health sector. It is a pleasure and honor to welcome you to this event, and hope you enjoy a guest lecture that promises to be enlightening, inspiring, and provoking. The Dean and the PIC, Dr. Hairul Anam, just informed us just now that this is, this event is part of the 2022 World Class Professor Program at the Faculty of Engineering, University of Jember, which is funded by the Ministry of Education and Culture, Research and Technology, and Higher Education in 2023. We know that this is a very competitive grant to get it. So thus I'd like to deliver my appreciation and thanks to the Dr. Hairul Anam, as well as to the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Dr. Triwahyu, because of their hard work and valuable contribution, I think, so that to make the today a reality. Dear student participants, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin the heart of today's lecture, I would like to take a moment to reflect on the significance of this event in the life of our institution. Guest lectures serve a bridge between academia and the real world. Will provide us with valuable insight from experts who have dedicated their life here in their respective fields. It offers us the opportunity to expand our horizons, challenge our preconceived notion, and nurture our curiosity for knowledge. So we are lucky today to have Prof. Claudio Castellini. This is from German, but his name Italian. Maybe he will, how to say, describe later about himself. He is from Friedrich Alexander University Erlangen, Nuremberg, Germany, and renewed as a researcher in medical robotics, focusing on rehabilitation and assistive robotics, human-machine interfaces and interaction and applied machine learning. He has not only excelled in their field, but has also shown a commitment to sharing their wisdom and experience with us for the next generation development. So I think I have said this morning that we will not stop for this event only. We will continue this activity later on, maybe with to develop to extend the collaboration between our university with the university in German about the respective topic that we talked this morning. As we begin on this intellectual journey with Professor Castellini, let us keep our mind open and receptive. Let us ask questions, seek clarity, and engage the meaningful discussion. After all, the purpose of education is not just to accumulate knowledge, but to use it as a catalyst for personal and societal growth. Again, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to those who support us of the event, without whose support today lecture would not have been possible. In conclusion, Let us make the most of this opportunity, not just as a passive listeners, but as active participants in the pursuit of knowledge. Let us embrace the insight that Prof. Castelli will share with us today and carry them forward as we continue our academic journey. By saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, let's officially start this event. And then, please, MC invite soon Professor Castelli to the podium to share the very invaluable wisdom with us. Thank you. Wabillahi taufiq walhidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada Bapak Iwan Taruna.
Thank you, Mr. Iwan Taruna.
Acara selanjutnya adalah foto bersama kepada Bapak Iwan Taruna, Bapak Hoirul Anam, Bapak Triwahyu Hardianto, Bapak Agung Prawira, dan Profesor Castellini. Dipersilahkan untuk bersiap-siap, berdiri, dan berfoto bersama.
The following agenda is a group photo session. We kindly request Mr. Iwan Taruna, Mr. Hairul Anam, Mr. Triwahyu, Mr. Agung, and Mr. Claudio Castellini to get ready for the photo session.
Dalam hitungan ketiga, 1, 2, 3. Oke. 1, 2, 3. Dipersilahkan untuk duduk kembali.
You may now take your seats.
Hadirin yang berbahagia, selanjutnya yaitu sesi diskusi bersama Profesor Claudio Castellini, PhD. Beliau merupakan salah satu profesor dan juga kepala laboratorium robotika di Universitas Friedrich Alexander, Jerman, yang akan memberikan inspirasi tentang ilmu kecerdasan buatan dan penerapannya di bidang medis. Untuk sesi diskusi ini, saya serahkan kepada Dr. Muhammad Agung Prawira Negara, STMT, selaku moderator yang akan memimpin diskusi kali ini. Kepada Bapak Agung Prawira, kami persilahkan.
Moving into the core of our event, the discussion with Professor Claudio Castellini, who leads the Robotics Laboratory at Friedrich Alexander University in Germany. He will share valuable insight on artificial intelligence in healthcare. For this discussion, I will turn it over to our moderator today, Mr. Muhammad Agung Prawira Negara. We invite Mr. Agung to lead the session.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the MC to give me the time. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's guest lecture. I'm Agung and I will be the moderator for today. Before we begin, I would like to introduce you the presenter. The presenter is Professor Claudio Castellini from Friedrich Alexander University Erlangen-Nuremberg in Germany. Today he will present about the artificial intelligence in its application in health sector. Before we start the lecture, I will show. Okay. Then I think I want to read a bit of Professor Claudio curriculum vitae. He obtained in 1998 a degree in electronics biomedical engineering from University of Genoa. In 2005, a PhD in artificial intelligence mathematical logic from the School of Informatics of the University of Edinburgh. Then returned to robotics for the disabled and spent like 4.5 years as a postdoctoral fellow at the Advanced Robotic Laboratory at the University of Genoa. And in 2009, he led a German Aerospace Center where Until now, he is a senior researcher at the Institute of Robotics and Mechatronics. And finally, in 2021, he has been appointed as a full professor of assistive intelligent robotics at the University of Erlangen-Nuremberg. He has like around more than 150 articles as an author and co-author, and he also as an editor as an editor of a book, and also published few book chapters. He also have a lot of research project as an international lecturer also for quite some times, and the recent award he has is in 2018 as Best Paper Award in Prosthetic at ICNR 2018, runner-up prize as a supervisor of Mr. Eduardo Ruiz Ramirez as the Best Master Science Engineering in 2017, and a few more. He also gave a talk in the IEEE Metro in 2022. In 2019 and 2020, he gave a tutorial at Genoa, Italy. In 2018, giving a lecture in University of Bologna, and a few more also. And currently he is associate editor of Frontiers in Neurobotics and associate editor of Frontier in Physiology. He also associate editor of ICORR 2022, Guest associate editor of Frontier in Neuroscience, Guest associate editor of Frontier in Rehabilitation Science, associate editor of ICORR 2022, and a lot more associate editor as a journal and international conference. From 2013, he is a chair of PNS of Machine Interface Community until now. And since 2001, he reviewed for several conferences and journals also. In 2021, he teach in the managing course, seminars and practical for a total of 40 ECTS at the magister level. So as of now, I will give the time to Professor Castellini.
Thank you very much. See, that's the optimal configuration. That's also always a problem for us engineers. I got a message in the chat. Well, someone might answer. Good. Thank you very much. Terima kasih, everybody here. I'm so honored. And selamat datang to my lecture. That's basically all my bahasa so far. I hope I can improve it the next few days, and maybe if I come back, if and when I come back to Indonesia. A wonderful place you have here, beautiful faculty, great university, and the city. Well, we arrived yesterday, so I didn't have time to explore it, but the surroundings are absolutely charming, so I'm really happy to be here. And so my first point is to thank heartily the organization, so all people who are organizing this physically, and mostly Dr. Anam, who's been my host for all the time, and whom we hosted last year, and we're gonna have him again in Erlangen in a couple weeks. This exchange program that like as your president said, this should be just the beginning of something, right? So we don't want to start here and then lay dormant, as they say, to put to sleep. We want to carry it on and transform it into something interesting for both universities and for the scientific growth of both our institution and your institution. So the lecture I'm going to give you today, I'm trying to keep it relatively short, and I have 1 hour and a half time to speak. Probably we can... say it again? 10:30, that's all right, yeah. So I'd like to possibly stop a little before, and then I would be very glad to take questions from all of you guys and girls. I see there's most of you are very young, and I'm really, really happy to see this. And this is wonderful. Can I quickly ask, which one of you comes from the engineering faculty? I think most of you, right? Yeah. Is there
Dari
anyone?
Fakultas Teknik,
Yeah.
Mas.
So all of them. So most of them. And all, so anyone from the medical faculty, Faculty of Medicine? Anyone from medicine? No. Okay. So we know that I can.
We
talk.
have some lecturer from the medicine
Okay,
faculty.
that's great. Okay.
The dean also here.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. So, yeah, okay. So I'll be talking not too technical, but if some points are not totally clear, just raise your hands and ask. I'm glad to be interrupted. There's no problem in that. Even if we make the lecture a little more interactive, this is even better, I would say. So, without much further ado, and congratulations on your university achieving this Times Higher Education placement, everybody yesterday. 15th place in the whole university, in the whole of Indonesia, right? Now I have a slide about Indonesia here, because it's a surprising place. Let me show you how. So, artificial intelligence in medicine, challenges and hopes. I mean, that's my main point here. Let's see if everything works fine. Yeah. So what I'm going to talk about today. So first, as usual, the guest introduces. It's a practice of good education, I would say. I mean, who am I here, and why am I here? Then ask a few questions that I hope that, well, in science you never find the answers, right? You keep on asking questions, but you never find the final answers. So, and that's the beauty of our job in the end. That we don't really know what's out there, but we just go and try to shed some light here and there, and whenever we find something that we can cling to, then we start building upon that single something. But the rest remains obscure. And this is a message for all of you young people, young women and young men here. So there's so much to be explored out there. So I urge you to what's going on there? What should I do? Why is that not working? Why is that working? That's the key to a successful career. Not only in research, I believe. Anyway, my specific field, assistive robotics or rehabilitation. I'll be talking about that a lot more. It's actually, this starts from big principles, and then it becomes more and more specialized and more specialized, and then at the end, possibly, we can have a chat again about first principles. So, what about AI? So AI, artificial intelligence, and medical robotics, which is exactly the stuff I'm doing over there. But mind you, I work in a department in which we tackle artificial intelligence in all fields of healthcare. And then, so, if I want to summarize everything in one single sentence, my main challenge is that artificial intelligence and human intelligence should really at some point come together. Well, the sooner the better, I believe, right? Let me tell you with a couple Google Maps what's going on here. So I was born in, well, that's a prehistory, right? The age of stone, 51 years ago, in a town in Italy called Genoa. It's a port city. And I stayed there, and I got my first, so my master's. It was not even called master's at that time. In this university here, University of Genoa is a reasonably good one still nowadays. And at some point, you're a young man, 27 years old. You want to move somewhere else because you're fed up with all you've seen and done. And so I moved to a very faraway place. Or I'll move the microphone closer to myself. If the mountain doesn't go to Muhammad, and so on and so forth. Right? So I decided to move somewhere else, definitely somewhere else. And so I had a big jump. You can see my cursor, right? Yes, you can. Off there to a place called Edinburgh, the capital city of Scotland. There I got my PhD. And PhD lasted 3-4 years. It can be a little longer than usual over there. And then you need to find a job. And I wanted to stay in research, so I came actually back to my hometown, down there in Genoa again, for a while. And that's where I started learning the job I have now. Let's say that before that, I was doing artificial intelligence, so in Edinburgh. Actually, it was called artificial intelligence, but it was maths. So there was nothing related to intelligence per se. And at that time, it was customary to call artificial intelligence a specific field of mathematics. And it had no application. You know, I had a hard time with my mom, because mom would say, Claudio, what is your job? Why do they pay you? What do they pay you for? Oh, well, yeah, I'm proving theorems on a whiteboard, and then a supervisor comes and says, nah, this is wrong, and then, you know, after a couple of years, he starts saying, I believe what you say is true here, but only over there. This is wrong, and then slowly everything goes right. And mom looks at me and says, I have no idea what you're talking about. Honestly, it was a little, you know, not applicable, right? Pure maths is fascinating. You enter your own state of mind, but then what is it good for? Well, it is great, but say the fallout happens possibly in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. I mean, in my research currently, I'm using a theorem which was proved in 1935 by a mathematician who was applying something to geology. And now what does that have to do with my job? Well, it is exactly the key to one of the specific parts of my system. Because a theorem is a theorem. It's a first principle, right? So it's something, it's up there, and who knows what it can be used for. It's like dynamite. You can use it to blow a bank, or you can use it to build a bridge. It's a tool. And when I came back to Genoa, I started learning how to apply that stuff. And I was lucky enough to bump into this laboratory, which was headed by Professor Giulio Sandini, who's now retired. And Giulio actually taught me a job, how to apply that stuff, so machine learning, to the disabled, to the needs of people who have problems because they underwent an amputation or because they had a stroke. You know, stroke is everywhere. Every one of us possibly has a old relation who's had a stroke, unfortunately, or any other. You know, people are in need of help. Can we use that stuff to help these people? Well, this is the beginning of it. And at some point, I decided to, you know, take my backpack again and go somewhere else. And then the fourth step was Munich, or anyway, not exactly Munich. You're going to see that, but Munich is basically in the heart of all the decadent Europe. And it's a large city, and I was working in the German Aerospace Center. Believe it or not, Aerospace Center, I was doing medical robotics, actually. And then at some point, actually 2 years ago, 2021, I was lucky enough that I was appointed a professor at Erlangen, which is slightly further north. It's about 250 kilometers north of Munich. And if you want, this is possibly even more in the very heart of Europe over there. So we are the hub of decadence over there. And so they say, okay, well, you know, I've been traveling quite a lot, right? Because Europe is large. Well, yes and no. I suggest you have a look at this site called The True Size. You can click on a country and place it over another country. And the cool thing of this website is that it corrects for the world projection, right? So if you live close to the equator, your country looks smaller than it is, because it's a sphere which you project onto a plane. And the net result is if you pinch Indonesia and you bring it over Europe, you realize how incredibly large this country is. It's actually way larger than the extent of continental Europe. It extends way further west than Portugal and way further east than even than Israel. To some extent, it's considered an associated country to European Union. So that's amazing. You have so much potential here. And you have as many inhabitants as, well, the United States. 250 million people in Indonesia, yeah. When in Europe it's 300 million, but the Americans are 260, I think. So there's so much potential here. And so when I see such things, I say, well, I didn't move so much, right? So not such a big deal, but still, it helped me build a career. That would be it. As I'm really interested in this comparison here. Just the section of Borneo which pertains to Indonesia is way larger than Germany. It's probably Germany and France put together. Sometimes it's nice to have some perspective. Now, right now I am affiliated to two institutions. The first is my university, so the FAU, Friedrich Alexander Universität, located mostly in Erlangen. As you can see, Erlangen is really small. Even Google Maps makes the name smaller. The largest city close by is Nuremberg, and then there's Munich over there. And the DLR, so the other institution I still work for, so the German Aerospace Center, is located here. So it's not really Munich. It's a place called Oberpfaffenhofen, and that's one of the challenges when you get there, to start learning how to pronounce the name of that village, which is quite a challenge for us. But you know, mind you, it's not very easy for us as well to say Situbondo, for instance, or Yogyakarta. That's not so easy. So, you know, every language has its own peculiarities. So to cut a long story short, let's have a look at these two institutions. The Friedrich Alexander Universität was founded actually in the mid of 18th century, so it's about short of 300 years old. And a full spectrum university, so in general we teach everything. So we have 5 faculties, 40, it's slightly more than that, still yet 40,000 students every year. And mind you, the city has 120,000, so 1 person in 3 in the full season is a student, not bad. We are 600 professors, 3,500 academic staff members, so administration and IT infrastructure. And we offer, it's now even more than this, it's about 290 bachelor and master programs. So it's a reasonably sized university. It's just as large as the number of students is concerned as this one. And I think it's the 3rd largest one in the Federation of Germany. So the city is small, but the university is raging. And I see an analogy here, right? So your city is not as large as Jakarta, of course, but the university seems to me really rampant. So this is really good. Now the Faculty of Engineering, that's where we work. So it has 10,000 students, 4 elite master programs, 120, so 1/5 of all the professors are in our faculty. You have 60 chairs and 6 departments. That's the building of the Faculty of Engineering. I must say it's really, really ugly. It's much, much worse than the building you have here. And you look at it from here, this is, in Europe we call this style brutalism. So it's like this architecture will attack you. It's like, whoa. You go there and you say, am I going to make this? And then you stay there for a few years and you earn a bachelor or master. The departments, so there's chemical engineering, there's electrical engineering, computer science or informatic as we call it, mechanical engineering, material science and engineering. This is absolutely wonderful. It's one of my favorite fields. I'm almost nothing to do with them, but just to get you the gist of how strange the application of stuff is, right? So material science, so there is a giant professor, one of the prominent figures in the world in Erlangen. His name is Aldo Boccaccini. He's not Italian, but Argentinian. So many Argentinians from South America, they come from Italy, so their ancestors come from Italy. So his name sounds Italian, but he's from Argentina. And what these guys do is they have bioreactors, so they have chambers in which the temperature and the concentration of salt and proteins and vitamins is held constant. They 3D print scaffolds, so towers of biocompatible material, and then they inject cells in it, and the cells grow. And so these people basically build new bones out of nothing, or right now they're trying to do an even harder enterprise. So they build muscles, and the muscle is much harder than a bone. It's an elastic structure. And muscles, we're going to be concerned about muscles a lot in this talk. So muscles are important. That's the way you move. You use your muscles, right? Never mind that. And last but not least, artificial intelligence in biomedical engineering, that's the place I work in. Actually, my laboratory, my chair, if you want, we are into the department called AIBE, A-I-B-E, AIBE, Artificial Intelligence in Biomedical Engineering. So what's the topic of that laboratory? Well, we try to deal with AI in all parts of BE, biomedical engineering, includes basically every healthcare application, which is mostly image processing or signal processing. The whole of healthcare, AI in healthcare. Let's put it like this. Shameless advertisement. If you're interested, this is our website. And if you take a picture of that QR, it will lead directly to our... Actually, if you write IROB, you see AIROB, IROB, that's Assistive Intelligent Robotics, you almost always get as first, you know, for good or bad, our own link. So the laboratory is called like that, and you can easily Google it. Yeah, and that will give you a bird's eye view of the activities we carry out. So this is the website. We try to keep it very well up to date. So right now we have a new publication by one of my brilliant PhD student, Marek Sierotovich. I'm not going to talk about his work today, but you know, the second entry here is some guests we have. I think Dr. Anam had an entry here because when we have a guest, then we sort of advertise that. So usually people will introduce you their team, so the people who work with them after the talk. I do it before because I think they're very, very important. Actually, without them, I couldn't carry out anything. So meet my postdoctoral student Sabine, our administrative assistant Antonia, and all my PhD students here. Some of them are external, some of them are internal. And yeah, the three internals, Marek, Fabio, and Marc-Anton Scheidel, all of them working in different, let's say, applications of what we do. Now the DLR is the German acronym for German Aerospace Center. It's a huge institution. It has now more than 10,000 employees. The slide is slightly outdated. And 58 institutes spread across 30 locations in the whole federation, and then we have a couple lobbying offices, so to speak. So in Brussels for the European Union, Paris, Tokyo, and incidentally Washington, D.C., because some part of the DLR is about military applications. This is clear, so German Aerospace Center. And actually that's where we are located, Oberpfaffenhofen. You can see it's the longest of these names, and it's a nightmare to understand how it goes in the beginning. So the Institute of Robotics within the DLR, that's where I developed. It is concerned with all possible branches of space robotics. So robots which will work in space. And look at that, there's a specific department devoted to medical and healthcare. Why is that? Because doing medical robotics is a really, really hard task. It's really hard. In a nutshell, there's a person who is controlling a robot. Now, robot or machine, however you want to call it. When you control your smartphone, you're controlling a robot. Essentially, that is a robot, right? But you have your hands and fingers, and you have your sight, and you are cognitively standard, so you know what you're doing, right? And by the way, the human-machine interface of the smartphone is incredibly good. I mean, you have the computational power of a mainframe located somewhere in the building of CIA in Virginia. So it's a supercomputer. And still you can manage to control it very easily. And anyone can do it, mind you, not only you and I, we are engineers, so we like, techno gadgets, we're into it, so we like information technology. No, anyone can work with that thing. A lawyer, I don't know, a doctor, whoever is not into information technology, and it's all right that they aren't, but they still can use it. Well, that's a good human-machine interface, right? Now, in the case of medical robotics, the user of your robot is a disabled person, which means they cannot move their fingers and hands properly. They cannot walk. Or if they can, their gait is impaired, so it's strange, it doesn't really work. Sometimes they don't exactly know what they're doing. If you have an amputated person, they don't have fingers, and they don't have what we call sensory motor feedback. So whenever you move, you know what you're doing because the receptors in your structure, they send signals back to you. You don't realize it because you started doing it when you were in your mother's womb, so as embryos. So it's so built in ourselves that we don't realize. But as soon as you stop receiving feedback from your body, that's a tragedy. It's horrible. You ever been to the dentist, and the dentist gives you anesthesia, right? Because they need to extract the tooth, say. And so your face becomes numb, and that's a horrible feeling. It's like you put your hands on your face, and it looks like there's a balloon here, and it doesn't belong to you. And you don't know what you're doing with your mouth, if you're salivating, if you're chewing, you have no idea. And so the human-machine interface we need to design in order for these people to control those robots is way more complicated than a standard human-machine interface. You can't have them, play around with Angry Birds on your smartphone. You cannot. So we need to find a different way. I'll talk about it later. But so to cut a long story short, why is this in the Institute of Robotics of the German Aerospace Center? Well, because it's interesting to explore it. Even in space, there's a lot of problems when people, non-disabled people, astronauts, they need to control their robots. And the same principles can probably be applied both in medical robotics and in space robotics. At least this is what my department director was always saying to the big bosses of the DLR when they needed to justify why the hell is Claudio doing medical robotics here? And it makes no sense. Well, it does, actually, it does. So kudos to my team. Actually, this group is waning out. Now so these people that graduated or they work with me on projects, which means that slowly I'm leaving the DLR in the course of the years. But these are the people that have been working with me. Notice that Marek Sierotowicz is also a PhD student of mine now, so he's the only person that I sort of brought forward, brought ahead. Good. So, what do we mean artificial intelligence in medicine? This is too small, so let me read you a few passages. This is Wikipedia. I like to start my lectures with Wikipedia, even for my students, because it's there. It's sometimes, most of the times, it's sort of reliable and it's well written, and it sort of sets the stage, right? So, artificial intelligence in healthcare is a big term, an umbrella term to describe the use of machine learning algorithms and software, aka artificial intelligence. So once again, when I was young and I graduated in artificial intelligence, that was an obscured field of maths. Nobody knew what artificial intelligence would mean. And now it's so popular. It's all over the place. But it's a different thing. It's no longer pure maths. Well, what is it? It's actually algorithms which mimic human cognition while analyzing, presenting, and comprehending complex medical and healthcare data. And a further interesting sentence, so sometimes the people who write Wikipedia really do have an insight, right? I say, AI is the ability of computer algorithms to approximate conclusions based solely, uniquely on input data, right? So what is artificial intelligence in today's lingo? It's stuff which will swallow a huge bunch of data, and it will find the relationship within this data. So that next time you ask it something, it will respond with something, and the something it gives you back makes sense. Now, does that mean it's intelligent? Now, this is the first provocation I'm going to send to you. Is ChatGPT intelligent? Well, you need to define intelligence here. That's a long problem. Philosophers of mind still have no idea exactly what intelligent means. I don't believe it is, honestly. It's a big function approximation. Now, I'm getting a little technical here, but so machine learning is approximating a function. There's a function which maps something onto something else, and I'm taking a function like you learned it in algebra, first year, right? So what is a function? Takes numbers, spits out numbers. Now, artificial intelligence is exactly this one. So you have a huge amount of data, and then you query those data, and you get an output. It's approximating a function. It may pass the Turing test. Turing test is this idea that Alan Turing had in the 50s. So how do we know that something is intelligent? You query that something without seeing its face. So it could be a human, it could be a machine. And if you believe that it's a human, then it is intelligent. I believe we need to update this notion a little bit. Because ChatGPT, if you're not into IT, if you're not an engineer, looks sort of reasonably intelligent. And you wonder, how the hell does it do that? Well, it knows, it's got the whole knowledge of the world, but it still is a function. It's something that you build using a cost functional. You minimize a functional, and that's it. So it's a mathematical procedure. Back to artificial intelligence in medicine. So most of it is we collect a huge number of images, say of, they say an MRT, so magnetic resonance, or X-ray of a fractured tibia. So some of them are fractured, some of them are not. And then we try to determine whether this image that I have now represents a fractured tibia or not. And maybe we also use it to guide the intervention of the orthopedician, right? So what forces should you apply to put it back? Now, sorry to disappoint you, and this talk is not going to be about that. Actually, there's a few people in my department who was really into this. One of them, my colleague Bernard Kainz, just won a huge grant from the European Union. So, the European Union is the main funding body in Europe. He got a lot of money to develop, in the course of 5 years, a really spectacular idea he's had in this field. So look at a lot of images and try to find out which one represents a disease and which one is not. But this talk is not going to be about that. It's rather going to be about my field. We rather use AI, machine learning, to have patients and therapists work with robots. So you need to really work with the patient physically. You have to put your hands on the patient, and that's why we always go to doctors first, because they know, with all due respect for the single 2 or 3 doctors who are here, we come to you guys because we don't know exactly how to handle patients. We need that knowledge. We're engineers. Engineers do not deal with people. They deal with numbers. And actually, I find this way more motivating, but this is my personal opinion, of course. And still, my students would really prefer to just program in front of the laptop and then publish. But that's, sorry guys, there's no chance. Actually, we work with patients, so we need to get on the field as soon as we can. And this is the field Mr. Anam works in, and that's why we get connected. So it's a long way to getting something meaningful in this case. So let's switch to artificial intelligence in medical robotics, which is a subfield of artificial intelligence in healthcare. So that means that we have a robot which works with a patient and or a therapist and or a surgeon. And we need this artificial intelligence to understand what the user, be it a patient, a therapist, or a surgeon, wants to do. The surgeon, let's say let me tell you a very quick story. There's a family in my hometown who they had a 6-year-old girl, and she was suffering of a very, very rare form of cancer. The only people who could operate on them were located in Texas. It's a long trip from my hometown to Texas. And then you fly to Texas, you stay there for a good couple months, and then, healthcare is completely private in the US. You have to pay for that. So these guys needed, I don't know how many tens of thousands of euros to do that. So they did some crowdfunding, and they collected that money. And I went there, and now, the operation was unsuccessful, and unfortunately the young woman passed away, so they went back. But now the point is, this is an operation, right? No one has the competencies in my hometown to perform that operation. Why don't we have a surgeon operate from Texas on a patient who's located in my hometown? Well, why don't we do that? Because that's a teleoperation problem. It's a really complicated teleoperation problem. Still, teleoperated surgery is happening, not that much, but it does. And there's a lot of problems you have to do here. Especially, you have to understand what the surgeon is trying to do, because there will be a time delay, right? And now, if the surgeon does something, but your machine here does something slightly different, then you run the risk of killing the patient. It could cause a hemorrhage, like a blood perfusion. And this is where my AI needs to understand what the surgeon needs to do, wants to do. Or I have a person without a leg, I give him a prosthetic leg. Now what does the patient want to do? So the simple, for example, the simple act of standing from sitting, so you're sitting on a chair and to stand up, how does the prosthesis know that I want to stand up? This is one of the key words that I'm going to repeat in this talk again and again, intent detection. So detecting the intent of a patient. Intent means that what you want to do. So I want to stand up. Now prosthesis needs to understand it immediately, just like my leg do, right? So I don't know what my legs do really, but I simply want to stand up and my leg help me stand up. That's what a prosthesis needs to do. It's a really, really, really hard business. Quickly, reliably, adaptively. Adaptively means this system needs to know what I want to do, and in the terms that engineers understand, it means I produce some signals, neural signals, and my system needs to understand what those neural signals mean. It's no easy task. So that's how the talk would have been called in the beginning, Connecting Man and Machine in Medical Robotics. Let's have a quick overview of that. That's perfect. And just checking my timing. Medical robotics is, well, surgical care robots, robots helping nurses in hospitals, and then exoskeleton for rehabilitation or for augmentation and prosthetics. So these robots, so for rehabilitation and for walking, they will wrap around your limbs, arms and hands, and they will move your limbs or help you move them. And if they help you in the right way, at some point you will recover the function, unless you are paralyzed. So in that case, there is a scant chance. Although there's a couple very interesting results lately, extremely interesting, so for people who have a spinal cord injury. You might have, so those of you who are interested in this might have seen something appearing on YouTube. So there's someone in Switzerland trying to reconnect electrically the two parts of the spine. This is nothing we do here, so this is my job is much simpler than that. Prosthetics is about literally building new limbs, right? Building a new arm, building a new hand, and then helping my patient control that hand somehow. So I have a few considerations here, remarks. So medical robotics is an unusual combination. It's a mixture of very basic research, medicine, psychology, maths, mechatronics, of course, informatics, very, very basic research, and stuff which needs to work. As having this nice chat with your president 1 hour ago, the beauty of being an engineer, okay, you guys are laboring to become one, so I think it's beautiful, it's nice to be an engineer, because like I said, we have to take the very basic research, the first principles, and sort of bring them down so that our robots, our systems, work the way they're expected to. So basic research, there's a number of them. I can just listing something here. Medicine, neuroscience, connecting to nerves and muscles. All your movement comes from neural information, so there's some electrical discharge going through your nerves, axons actually, neurons. Now, can we read that code and transform that code into the motion of a prosthetic knee, for instance, or a prosthetic hand, or an exoskeleton which helps me move my arms? Mechatronics, smart materials, of course. But now notice psychology. Why do we need psychology? And this is a field I only got into 6 or 7 years ago. Before that, I knew nothing about that. Still, we need that. We have, not in my group, the group with which I work with has an experimental psychologist in it. We need them because these things are applied to people who are not into information technology. So we need to know what they want. We need to model our systems upon their desires and needs. Otherwise, they won't work. Even if your toy, your robot is beautiful, it really works fine in the lab. When you try to translate it to the clinics, it will not be accepted People will not accept it. So we need psychology there. And as well, from basic research, we need to make it work. So we need to put the patient at the center of the research since the start and test on the field. It's no point doing offline testing. It's no point working in front of your laptop. You really have to test it talking to doctors, and that's a pain in the neck now and then. It's really difficult. Medical robots which only work in the lab, let me give you this sentence, are useless. Lab meaning my lab, my engineering's lab. So it needs then to work when my doctors have their patients apply the robot and make them work there. So let's see a few examples. Plan to be over with this in 10 minutes, that'll be fine. So I just shamelessly ripped a few movies from YouTube. So you can find this yourself. This is surgical robotics. So this is a clinic somewhere in Germany. Ingolstadt is not far away from Erlangen. Now this is a clip in which they tell you what's going on in this clinic in Ingolstadt. And what they did is they bought one of these monsters here. This is a Da Vinci platform. This is a surgical robot. It has 5 robotic arms. Now each one of these things hanging from the ceiling is a robotic arm. And they get into the patient and they operate on the patient. And now you just couldn't see it, but it's there. And just at the other end, there is what really looks like this is like a teleoperation setup. So the surgeon gets into it, he moves a couple joysticks, and he can move the robot operating on the patient. This is teleoperated surgery. Provided that you manage to, well, make it safe and cancel the delay somehow, this thing here could be in Genoa, Italy, and this thing here could be in Texas. And this would have saved, not sure it would save the life of the daughter of my friends, but it would have saved them 50,000 euro. You know, they're not affluent people, so they could have stayed in Genoa and the operation could have happened by teleoperation, so a teleoperated operation, if you want. This is a really nice clip. So, see, the surgeon has pedals, and it has a display where he sees what the controls do. And now the most interesting part is when he literally plunges into the machine. Let's see, here it is. See, so he's inside it and he's moving the joysticks. And he sees with the camera what the robot sees at the other hand. So he's got visual feedback, as they say. He's got goggles so he can see through. And I just wanted to show you how the joysticks look like. See, this is him operating on someone inside the machine, and these things here are the joysticks. It's not like standard Xbox controllers, of course, it's more complicated stuff. But they give you 6 degrees of freedom at the end effector, so you can move around and rotate your hand and wrists. And the movement of the surgeon will be, there you go, projected on the slave setup, so they say the remote setup. You see that he's doing things here with his joysticks, but these two tools are doing things over there. Now this is a pepper, I would say, but it could be actually a patient on the operating table. So how does artificial intelligence come into play here? What can we do to improve this even better? So to make the system safer, we could have some kind of visual recognition of body parts of interest, because the robot sees what's inside the patient, right? So you should be able to model, say I'm operating on the gallbladder, which is relatively close to the liver, right? Now say, we're operating on the liver, on some part of the liver. If there's a liver cancer, we have to rip it off. Now, hitting the liver with a sharp tool is really problematic, because the liver will immediately bleed out. So you're killing the patient. Now, what about we're able to recognize, to see, that the robot is able to see where the liver is. You need a lot of artificial intelligence for that. And so the robot can prevent the surgeon from accidentally pinching the lever. That's what we used to call a virtual wall, right? What about having force feedback? So you move a joystick, and the joystick moves freely, but then the tools over there are touching something. So it would be really nice to have so-called haptic feedback. So when the tool touches the lever, the surgeon should be feeling some resistance here. And to give him exactly the feeling of what he is touching. Huh? What about having augmented reality to improve guidance? You don't only see a lever, but superimposed to the lever you see arrows and a head-up display which tells you this is the point which you have to cut, and this is where you should not go. Yeah, there's a lot of directions in which we can do. This is another, this is the most interesting late advancement in surgical robotics. So this is what I was talking about. So you can model a femur precisely using MRT scans, and then the robot can, well, not autonomously, but guide the surgeon to exactly plan the ablation of the bone, because you know what the shape of your prosthesis is, and you can exactly place the prosthesis in the bone, because you will be drilling a hole which is exactly shaped like a prosthesis. Fancier things are, so this is about haptic feedback actually, a robot which will palpate, right? It will touch your tissue, determine how stiff the tissue is, and so tell you, well, you should be using such and such force in this case. Or inserting a soft multi-DOF robot inside the throat. So a robot which can bend arbitrarily. So it can follow the profile of the inner parts of the body and perform an operation faster and more safely. There's a couple of them more which, well, I urge to have you look at it yourself. A cyber knife. So this is a system for aiming radiations, focused radiation, exactly where they should be so they won't damage the rest of the patient. And you need to know where the point is, and you use this kind of scans, right? So where the moment you know where the tumor is, you can focus the beam over there. So on and so forth. More medical robotics, exoskeleton. This is popular, probably the most popular. There's not very many copies sold, but it is there. So for spinal injured people, especially thoracic, so those who cannot walk anymore, an alternative solution to the wheelchair is getting into this machine here, and the machine will move your legs and help you walk. Notice that this person here has a wristwatch. You see? Wristwatch. And that's the way these people control the exoskeleton. Now, notice as well that they need to have crutches. Without crutches, you cannot keep the balance because the machine is not able to sustain your lift, your weight. Still, this is, these people cannot walk at all. This is painful and difficult, but, it's much better than not walking at all, right? And now this is where we have a huge mechatronic problem, issuing the right torques to the motors that are moving your legs. And here is we also have a huge safety problem. If you fall down and you are inside this thing and this thing is rigid, you're gonna really have a bad time. Climbing the stairs, going down the stairs, I say that this is very, very difficult. Now this is a promotional film because the Rewalk is sold. How can we improve the situation using AI? Well, control of body weight balance, and this is the first time we really see intent detection in action. So mind you, connect to nerves and muscle and understand the patient's desires. Let me show you another. This is not a promotional film. This is about a clinic in which they really are trying to have this very unlucky young man use the Rewalk. This is the same exoskeleton. By the way, I need to make a disclaimer here. I have no commercial interest in any of these companies, Da Vinci, Rewalk. I'm just picking them up because they are the big ones. First of all, getting into the exoskeleton is a pain in the neck. It's a really painful process. It takes minutes. Remember, this guy has no control from the waist down, right? His legs are completely dead from the motoric aspect. Takes him 5 minutes to get into the exoskeleton from one chair to the other. I'm skipping a little here. And then at some point he's ready to start when you need to be blocked. So crotches back, and now that's the transition from sitting to standing. Now how does he do that? You see that he operates on his wristwatch. He's touching a button on the wristwatch. And that's where the exoskeleton gets into the sit to stand mode, so to speak. It's all pre-programmed, right? Now there's a sensor in the exoskeleton, and whenever the sensor starts feeling that you need to stand, he will help you stand up. And now notice that he needs help from 3 people around because he's still not able to control, to balance himself. Now he touches the wristwatch again, and then he leans forward. There's an IMU in this exoskeleton, an inertial measurement unit. Never mind the technicality. It will tell you when you lean forward. And as you lean forward, the exoskeleton will start moving your legs in a totally pre-programmed fashion. You cannot change it here. The only thing you can do is you can lean backwards, and then the exoskeleton will stop. And then you have a huge problem, which is turning around. The exoskeleton was not programmed to do that, so how do you do that? Well, I think in this case they suggest him that he pivots on one of the crotches and does this counterclockwise turn. But it's really, really hard. I mean, we can do better than this. Well, yes, I mean, no offense intended for this company. It's the first one, so hey, kudos. But we can do better than this, right? For instance, we could read the neural signal or the EMG signals, and Dr. Anam and I got in touch exactly because of this thing called EMG. So you read the muscle signals and you understand what the patient wants to do, and then you have the exoskeleton do what the patient wants to do. I hope this matches with what I said before. Further example, this is another exoskeleton which is not yet commercially available. It's called AnyExo. This is for the arm. This is another beautiful machine developed in Lausanne in Switzerland. So this thing will help you perform all these movements, and it's so light and compact that you can reach your whole peripersonal space. You can even put your hand behind your back and slip your wallet into the back pocket of your trousers, right? Now this thing will help you move after a stroke. So this is supposed to be a stroke patient. He is inside the AnyExo and he sees a game here. This is called gamification. So you involve people in a game to raise their excitement. Huh? And then you have them sort of recover some of the functions. So stroke rehabilitation usually is someone will move your limbs. So the nurse, the therapist will move your limbs, and just by moving your limb, new neural pathways will form in your brain. So, you know, stroke is part of your brain being damaged because of blood perfusion. That's the best way we know about rehabilitation. That's the best way we know how to do rehabilitation. Now a robot could help. And here, and I hope that the pattern starts emerging, right? Again, what about we try to let the patient choose what she wants to do? So the robot moves in a pre-programmed fashion. No, I want the patient to express their opinion, so to speak. The patient says, I want to pick up that bottle of water in front of me. And I do that just by trying to move there. Now my system reads my signals and says, oh, that's what you want to do. So the exoskeleton will help you grab the bottle. Once you are at the bottle, you need to grasp firmly. And then my intention is bring it to my mouth because I want to drink from it. This is a very difficult movement. In the beginning, people with stroke have a huge problem doing that stuff. Robots could help. Let me show you an example in prosthetics. So this is a TED talk, which appeared 10 years ago, more or less. So Hugh Herr is a professor at, well, MIT, possibly the most respected technical university in the world. He's a full professor in biomechanics. And he happens to be a bilateral foot amputated person. You see that he has no feet? He has 2 prostheses. Can you see it better somewhere? So he did the TED Talk while wearing his 2 prostheses. He designed them. Perfect balance. He can move as he wants. There is no intent detection here, it's just mechanics. Right? Foot prostheses are very simple, but they are genial. They're beautiful. They basically consist of a spring. So this guy was a mountaineer. He was climbing mountains and he got into a storm and the temperature went down abruptly. So they recovered him day after, but his feet were frozen. And so they needed to amputate his feet. That's a common problem when you get caught in a very cold environment and you have to stay there for a few hours. So he started designing his own feet and he managed to come up with a series of ideas for the design, especially determining how stiff the stump is. Stump is the remaining part of the bone. And then building the perfect socket. This is a socket. Building the perfect socket for you. You meaning any patient. Again, we're talking of personalized healthcare here. And okay, right, this being a TED Talk, he goes along and tells you a lot of stories of what he does in his lab. I met him in Singapore a couple days ago, by the way. He's a really motivated person, because he is an amputated person, not the least. And well, in this TED Talk, there's in the grand finale, he calls upon the stage ex-professional dancer, and this dancer is wearing one of his prostheses. As you can see her, this is what we call a left-handed transtibial amputation. So she still has her knee, but her tibia was amputated. So she was amputated through the tibia. Tibia is this bone here, the calf bone. Right? And so prosthetics is the frontiers for the interface between man and machine. Prostheses are your new limbs. They should not be tools. They should be your arms and legs. And they are closely attached to your body. There must be a symbiosis between your body and the prosthesis, right? An error by a prosthesis can lead to trauma and accident. Suppose you fall down because your leg prosthesis got it wrong, so to speak. Still nowadays, in the research, deciding when to climb stairs is a problem. When you walk in a line on a flat surface, oh, by the way, flat, without cobblestone, flat, completely flat, like this one, or beton, like concrete, that's doable. But at some point, so there's a staircase, you want to climb the stairs. How does the prosthesis know that you want to climb the stairs? Because the motion to climb the stairs is quite different from walking on a straight line. Prosthesis needs to understand. It's again a problem of intent detection. I hope the sort of pattern is coming up here. Arm prosthetics. The DARPA is, you probably know that, is the defense, the research arm of the Ministry of Defense, the Department of Defense of the US. The United States, for better or good, are involved in a number of wars or military operations in the world, and they have a lot of veterans, people who come back without legs and without arms. Now, an arm prosthesis is possibly the most difficult problem in this field. These people have what we call a transhumeral amputation on the left-hand side. So they still have their shoulder, but they don't have their elbow anymore. So they get fitted with this prosthetic arm. And now the point is, how do these people move the prosthetic arm? They cannot use joysticks. You know, they could use the other hand to move the arm, but that's on the verge of stupid. It makes no sense. You need to read signals from their shoulder and turn those signals into control commands for your prosthesis. Now, how do they do them? How do they do this in this clip especially? How does this person raise his arm or make it go backward and forward? Well, the solution they had here is here. Can you see that? There's an inertial measurement unit on their shoe. So an inertial measurement unit is the same stuff that I was talking about the rewalk, right? So it tells you what the inclination of your, well, surface is, in this case a shoe. And so the idea is that they map the inclination of the shoe to the motion of the arm. You want to raise the arm, hope you can, like this. Sorry about the guys in Zoom. So if you lift your shoe like this, so you do a dorsiflexion, then the arm goes up. And if you do that, the arm goes down. So it's an effective interface, but it's not really natural. Again, we can do better. At least this is my hope. Now, prosthetics, yes. One further interesting part here, and I'm slowly going to the conclusion, is the following. Especially in prosthetics, but in all these examples. We need the human operator, patient, to get in tight connection with the machine. And this can only be realized, in my opinion, in time. It's like you learn to do something new. I have a couple examples here. Play the piano, play tennis. Now, playing the piano or a musical instrument or playing tennis, that requires a long training, right? What about buckling your shoes, right? Tightening your shoelaces. You learned that when you were, I have no idea because I have no kids, but probably 5, 6 years old, maybe even earlier than that. In the beginning, it's impossible. I mean, you have no idea how to do that, and you become proficient in a couple days. And that accompanies you for the rest of your life. For everybody here, it's easy to buckle your shoes, right? Now, this is my idea. These people need to learn how to use our devices a long time. Practice all the time. And now, of course, if we do this, we need a system which is adapting to the skill of the subject, which is changing in time. So we need artificial intelligence which will adapt in time across the weeks and the months and the years to the patient. And so this is maybe I'm saying the big fundamental difference between what we do here and what we do in the rest of AI for healthcare. Like I said, so you can have so you want to find cancer in a number of MRT scans, then you have as many images as you can, and you apply deep learning convolutional neural network to that, and then you try and classify this is a cancer, this is not a cancer. But you can actually have a big, huge bunch of data in the beginning. You let your system swallow it. You build a decision function, because don't get me wrong, guys, I love this field, but artificial intelligence is a big empty keyword. This is minimizing a cost function. It's function approximation. It's a mathematical problem. It does have implications, so like it gives rise to a wonderful emerging property, but it still is a simple, it's actually quite simple as a mathematical problem. You probably need your calculus 2, 3 or 4 years, and it will be fine. But now the point is, that is minimizing something. In this case, we have an added problem. Now and then, my artificial intelligence needs to readapt. It needs to gather new data from the subject, because the subject's skill are changing. It's like you learn to, that actually happened to me, really. I haven't touched the guitar in probably 15 years. But when I was a young man, you know, in order to attract girls, I wanted to be playing the guitars. And being a guitar player was really cool. So I started learning the guitar, and I bought a guitar for, well, 10, 15 euro, which is like the worst guitar you can think of. Start learning. You get proficient. At some point, you realize that the guitar is no longer good for you. You need a better guitar, because you became better. Now, if you have a prosthesis on a person, in the beginning, this guy will be falling around and, you know, having trouble. Then he will learn. And that's where, well, he doesn't need a new prosthesis, but he needs does he need a new artificial intelligence? No, we can have the artificial intelligence gather new data and incorporate this new data into its previous knowledge, right? So it's no longer big data in the beginning and then go. It's rather small data for a long amount of time. Yeah, this is where the user comes into play. It's not the customer or the user of a tool. Rather, it's the teacher for a robot. It teaches a prosthesis, right? And that's where human intelligence and machine intelligence need to come together, in my opinion. Let me show you a couple pieces of videos that we did in my lab, just to conclude. So I'm a quarter of an hour early, but I would really like to answer some questions, so I'd probably stop after you see this. So meet the Toro. This blue big guy is a humanoid platform that was developed now sort of 10 years ago at my previous institute, so the DLR, the German Aerospace Center. This is an example of people teleoperating the robot. As you can see, there is no, well, you cannot see it. Trust me, there is no motion capture. So this healthy person, unimpaired, right? He wears a few inertial measurement units so we can reconstruct the body configuration. In other words, we know how he's moving his arms. And he wears 2 mayos. So the mayo is this black bracelet here. The mayo consists of 8 EMG sensors. So EMG, electromyography, the signal Mr. Anam, Dr. Anam, sorry, and I deal with. What does it give you? Well, it gives you the chance of knowing if you want to close your hand or you want to point your finger without having sensors on your hands. So Donato, actually his ex-student, was doing a demonstration, and having the robot perform these really, really complicated bimanual coordination tasks. Now, it might not get to you as very complicated, but teleoperating this bimanual robot is really a hard task. I did it myself in the beginning, and in the very beginning I was like, this is not gonna work, so I've gone the wrong path. But in the turn of 30 minutes, 20 minutes, I started learning myself how to do that. It's nothing you program in your computer, so I know every detail of this system, but then learning how to do it physically, now that's a different story. And that's, our systems need to be easily learnable. So Donato was, dialing stuff on a phone and blah, blah. Now the interesting part comes when we involve amputated persons, so persons without hands. Now this is Wolfgang. Wolfgang was born without a right hand. As you can see, he has no hand. And still is doing the same stuff. How can he move the right hand of the robot? How can he actually close and open the hand? Well, because we are recording his muscle activity. Thanks to his muscle activity, we detect his intent to close the hand. We know that he wants to do something. And now we transmit that something to the hand of a robot, and the robot does it. And then we wanted to go a little further, and so we involved Haji, Iraqi refugee. And this person was involved in a mine accident. So he's one of the very, very rare, lucky bilateral transradial amputated persons, so he has no hands. He lacks both hands. It took him a little longer, but he learned how to do the tasks. He could do exactly the tasks that you and I were doing, and it took him a couple hours. Now, I think this is remarkable. Haji has no relation with engineers, so he's I think, well, he does nothing now because he can't do anything. I think he stays at home and enjoys his family life. I think he was a sort of a mason in Iraq, so it has nothing to do with techno gadgets. So this is what I call a, well, academic, good example of intent detection. Now let me skip to the very last movie I wanted to show you. I had prepared a much, much longer talk, but then I got carried away by my own enthusiasm. So this is a very latest experiment we showed in Singapore as well. This guy is wearing 2 of these bracelets, and he's controlling the black hand on the screen. And now the remarkable part here is that the hand responds almost in real time. And he's controlling 3 degrees of freedom, so flexion, rotation of the wrist, and closing, opening of the hand at the same time. And there is no motion tracking here, so we're only using the EMG signals. And now this is the typical target test. So there's a shadow hand, and we ask the subject to try and put the black hand in the same configuration. And as you can see, they succeed. Now here as well, the hand is like that. Place it like this. And here the hand is rotated on the right. And so just by using the EMG, this person managed to match the target. And we tried it on an amputated person. Again, Chiara was born without a hand, so it's not an amputation technically. And as you can see, so she's not moving anything because she has nothing left to move. But she actually manages just by producing signals to move the hand, exactly like you and I would do. And it matches the configuration, and then he wins the tasks. She wins the task, sorry. Further configuration, change it like that. Takes a while, of course. She needs to learn, but then she becomes proficient. So, coming to the conclusion, take-home lessons. What do you make of all this? What do I make of all this? Well, I have 2 sentences. The first is put the user at the center of your research. Sitting in front of your laptop won't do. Now, if you do the other kind of artificial intelligence in health, no, that won't do the trick in that case as well. So you need to know where your data comes from. So you need to go to the field and talk to doctors in any case. So, it's maybe a little more in my field, but even if you do just imaging, you need to know what's going on there. Now, my second point is the following. AI is not ChatGPT. It's not a big bunch of data and the minimization function. Well, it is, because that's what it is. But it is something that should grow along, become better in the course of time, thanks to you and the therapist, right? And that's why I say human and machine learning together are better than just machine learning. So AI in medicine, okay, but together with human intelligence, because human intelligence can guide the AI to do the right thing. And I think I'm done with this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Claudio, for the nice presentation. We learned a lot about AI itself and medical robotics. So now we have a question and answer session. Please raise your hand. Okay, please, ma'am.
There's always someone needs to break the ice, right? So those people are always very shy in the beginning. Someone needs to start.
Thank you, Professor Claudia. My name is Ulfa Elvia. I'm Dean from the Medical Faculty.
Oh.
I'm also a plastic surgeon. About the robotic surgery, we already use this robotic surgery for the treatment of our patient. But we have a problem in our field, especially in Indonesia. Like in Jember is a rural area, so we have problem about the cost because robotic surgery is very expensive. So we can do much using robotic surgery for treatment our patient. And the second problem, sometimes we don't have knowledge, not familiar to use the robotic surgery. So sometimes we need a long time to treat our patient, and we decided to use a traditional strategy or traditional surgery to help our patient. So I want you to give a suggestion for us how we start to introduce robotic surgery to make familiar and to make easy in our fields, and how we start in especially from the institution, because in the future I think robotic is very easy to help us, especially as a doctor or a therapist. That's my question. Thank you.
That's thank you for the question. I wouldn't know where to start to answer this question. So yeah, so robotic surgery. Okay, my view of these things is It's stuff that companies need to build. So the Da Vinci used to cost a fortune. Now it can have it for a much lower amount of money. And of course, given that Indonesia is a middle-income country, there's always a problem. Reducing the cost of your hardware without losing the quality, because here, the life of a patient is at stake. That's a huge problem. For robotic surgery, I have no solution really. Not because I don't see any solution, but because I'm not an expert in the field. I mean, you need to find, so one of the things I can say is, as the technology spreads around and comes to more producers, you probably get the same stuff at lower prices. Say, I'm not sure, full surgical robotic platforms, there should be 3 or 4 in the world, right? One is the Da Vinci, another one is by Medtronic, there must be another one, but like I said, I'm not an expert. Imagine there were 10 producers, one located in India, one located in China, really, trying to improve the cost ratio, the price to quality ratio. In that case, I believe that you can start buying more. That's the only thing I can suggest. You need a lot of training, but that's like one. And once you get the availability of such hardware, I think it's. And I don't want to give such a big suggestion here, but incorporating these skills in a course in the masters could already be something. So that's where you need to have people who want to be surgeons in the medical faculty. They should start possibly playing around with the virtual setup or with the mock setup. Da Vinci sells the research setup, for instance. You can buy one. It's still quite expensive. But still you can have people try and work out their way to learn how to do this in advance. And then there's a big aspect that we the engineers usually neglect. It's the feedback from those who work on these platforms. So you need to have people come back to you and say, look, this thing here will not work. I don't like it, and my colleagues won't like it. It's about acceptability again. That's why we need or psychology or anyway user studies or focusing on the subject. I could cite a couple examples from prosthetics, so solutions which we thought were groundbreaking, and then people come back and say, I'm not interested in this, or this is too heavy. Yeah. In the case of prosthetics or muscle control or medical robotics, well, bringing the cost down is getting slowly to reality. And this is what Dr. Anam and I are working on, sort of. It doesn't have to do with surgical robotics, so sorry, this doesn't answer your question. But in our field, we're trying to have, for instance, so on one hand, the sensors you use to detect the muscle activity are getting cheaper and cheaper. But we can use different techniques. We don't need the stuff that we saw over there. We can use something which is much cheaper. And then, prostheses are very expensive until there is a big market for that. Or your government subsidizes it, which is also a good way. So legs is fine because there's a huge number of leg amputated people. Now, arm amputations are much seldom found in the world. Luckily, we're happy about that. But that means that companies who build an arm, such as the one we saw, they are at odds because they cannot sell enough of them, so they cannot make money. These things are masterpieces of technologies. It takes 20 years to develop them, so imagine the cost that they have. And then they need to break even with that. They cannot, because either you sell one for €1 million and no one will buy it, not even in Switzerland, or you just don't sell it because there's too few of them. Now, there's an institution a couple institutions in Europe right now that are trying to bring the technology down to plausible costs. So say costing 1/3 of what they cost and still providing some function. In the case we want to translate some of this technology to middle-income countries, and Indonesia would be a great target for me because of this, not alone because of this collaboration with Dr. Anam, then you need to find some smart solutions. And especially you need to be focusing on the function. So once again, in hand prosthetics, there is one hand that you can buy, and it's a prosthetic hand, and you can move each single fingers. So he has 6 motors in the hand. Now my point is, what is the usefulness of being able to move the little finger alone? Close to nothing. So why do we have a motor here? We can do away with that motor. We can probably have 1 or 2 motors in the hand. So you can close and open the hand. And then you have motors in the wrist, because this is a really, really complicated and useful movement. And that's where these guys are going to. And this is that instead of having 6 motors, you have 3. So it's lighter, it produces less heat, it's cheaper. That's the only thing I can suggest here. Even a single degree of freedom, open and close, but coherently with what the subject wants to do. This would be a breakthrough. Sorry, that does just a partial answer to your question.
Okay. Any other question? We also have a question in Zoom. It's from Indra. Is the minimum processor requirement in order to achieve efficient response? I think in AI. What is the minimum processor requirement in order to achieve efficient response?
This is a typical engineer's question, right? But it's actually, the question is smart. I believe the point is, right now, deep learning approaches are super popular in artificial intelligence. So that is nothing you can do on your laptop. Well, you can to some extent. But usually, you need a cluster. You need, a cluster to build your model and running for 1 week. This stuff here is nothing like that. Everything can be miniaturized on an FPGA. So something which will be aboard your prosthesis. So minimum requirement is really small. You don't have to worry about that if you do prosthetics or exoskeleton as well, rehabilitation. Actually, this is one of my philosophies. I don't think you should not need so much computational power. So we try to keep it as compact, small as possible, and simple. And it does work to a good extent, so we're happy so far.
So we can say that it depends on the system itself,
yes,
right?
Yes, definitely. But in general, you don't need so much computational power here. That's not the big problem.
Okay. Thank you. Any other question? You can add bahasa if it's hard. I can try to translate. Please.
Greetings to all participants here. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Esther, an undergraduate student from the engineering faculty majoring petroleum engineering. I may not ask advanced questions like previous ones, but first of all, big gratitude to Professor Castelli for this prestigious moment of attending your amazing lecture. There are 2 main questions that I would like to ask. The first one, we all know that AI has its cons and pros. One commonly discussed contradictory issue is the fear that AI and all things related to robotics will take over the world someday. And it's even a fear held by a group of people. Like, how will humans earn a living if everything is done by robots? And what's the fate of future education if AI or maybe like ChatGPT can answer everything? And what if AI attacks humankind? Something like questions like that. And my question is, what is your point of view as an expert in this field regarding these mass concerns? And how likely are these things to happen in the future? And it is crucial and it is very acceptable that harmonizing AI and human intelligence involves responsible development and ethical considerations and collaboration between AI systems and humans to achieve the best outcomes. And therefore, how can we as youngsters harmonize artificial intelligence and human intelligence? That's the first question. And my second question is related to the medical sector. As you mentioned before, that the development of AI goes through many stages of try and try again, and it's certainly impossible to do trial and error on someone's life, right? But there can be sacrificial lambs or maybe guinea pigs, or maybe there can, we even don't know, but still, how are these trial stages developed, considering that the medical sector deals with someone's life and death? So these are my questions, and I hope I'm not being too chatty here. Thank you in advance. I'll give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
So two questions are, how do we develop responsible AI, and how do we enforce trial and error since we have patients? Now, to the first question is extremely broad, right? It involves, there's actually a colleague of mine, Vincent Miller, in my department. He is about the philosophy of artificial intelligence, ethics and artificial intelligence. As an engineer, my answer to that is interaction. So right now, ChatGPT is something you query and you get an answer out of that. It should be interactive, so ChatGPT should ask you, why am I wrong here? Well, actually, this is what my prostheses do, right? Sometimes they get it wrong, so I want to move in a direction and they move in the other direction. And so they stop, and on the screen I see, the movement is failed. So tell me what's going on there. Now there's more data I need to acquire. Sometimes it's me, or the user if you want, telling the system, you did it wrong. You need to learn here. So there's this teacher-disciple interaction relationship, which is now completely not there in artificial intelligence. But your model should improve a long time. And I'm not sure this really connects to an ethical AI, because if the people this AI interacts with are evil, then the AI will become evil. That's no question about that. But this is a very fundamental question about human behavior, so I'm not sure I'm qualified to say anything about that. It's like I said, it's dynamite, right? You rob a bank with dynamite, or you build a bridge or a motorway so you can get faster to Jember from Surabaya, for instance. But interaction is one of my keywords. Rather than having something you query, you have something which grows along with you. Second question was trial and error, given that there's patients. Well, we have a lot of ethical considerations to take into account here. The answer is very simple. You start from very, very simple things in which the patient cannot get harm. Say you move a virtual leg on a screen. Nothing can happen. You place your sensors on the leg of an amputated person or on a patient with stroke, and you have a virtual leg move on the screen. That's completely harmless. So there they can try and get it wrong as long as they want. Second stage, you have them sit and you have them wear the prosthesis, and you put the prosthesis in a safety mode so it can really move a little, very, very little. And since they sit, there's no way they can fall. Third, and you know, every time they become proficient with the system, first with the leg on the screen, then with the leg sitting on the chair. Then you have them stand up and walk, but with rails and possibly a harness, so an elastic band coming from the ceiling. So if the leg fails, they don't fall down because the harness is hanging. And only when they get proficient with that, you get to the further stage. So you let them walk with rails. That's a typical prosthetic leg training assessment and training protocol. And so in the end, you get to a stage in which it fails just as much as you fail with your own legs. That's the best you can do. Okay, maybe you can do even better than that. That's for us to be discovered. We still do not know. So you go in stages, from simple to hard. And that's how we do it.
Okay, any other question? Is there any follow-up for this?
Yeah, you've provided very insightful answers, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other question? You can ask in Bahasa, and I will help you in translation as best as I can, of course. Please.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Warm.
My name Imam from the Faculty of Science and Mathematics. From your explanation, we learn about the artificial arm and artificial leg, and so when we have this device. Device growth, the intelligence is growing for one person. Then the question is, can we use this equipment to different people?
The short answer is no. So far we cannot. I have no idea how to do that. Every single, it's
Equipment,
sort of also my philosophy, right? So these devices are so personal that they become your own devices.
Yeah.
Then you take the device and give it to someone else, it will not work.
Yeah.
So the crucial point is to keep the calibration. Like we engineers, we know what I mean. The calibration should be super short.
Okay.
But it could happen 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 times along a couple months. And then you have a complete adaptation between your leg and yourself.
Yeah.
And once it's adapted to you, probably it will work not that much with others. And there's a few articles out, me myself have published in that as well, in which, so you collect data from a number of people, and then you build a synthetic model. So one single model which works fine for all these people. And then you can preload your system, your artificial intelligence with that model, and then try to use even less data from the new patient to adapt. So you can do some kind of boosting, it's called, or model transfer, I believe, right?
I see. Okay.
So that's a possibility. It's an interesting field of research. I mean, once I can obtain a good reliability of my devices with my method, I would like to explore that one. I say that it's a second problem I would tackle. So it's not my first problem right now, but it's one of the ones I would go and tackle in a while.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question? Please.
My name is Dennis from Department of Electrical Engineering. So there is one line that I found it quite interesting, that artificial intelligence must meet human intelligence. And my question is, what are the technological barriers that are correlating to those lines? Thank you.
So the technological barriers to interaction with machines, there's none. There is none. It's just a little more difficult from a human point of view. First of all, I don't see any technological barrier to that. So that's more of a, so for the user, it's harder because they need to teach my device. Being a teacher is difficult, I can tell you. And the second point is, at the level of research, if we want to do something like that, we engineers need to go and talk to the mathematicians, to the doctors, and that's a really difficult task. So you need to have collaborative projects which include the faculties of medicine, the faculties of psychology, the faculties of mathematics. So I would say it's not a technological problem, it's more as a society, human problem, but that we can solve.
So the problem like one device cannot be used for the other user is one of the society problem, but not the technological one.
I don't believe it's mostly technological, no.
Thank you for your answer.
I think we had two more over there. If you speak loud, probably we can hear you, right?
Please.
Good morning, Professor. I want to ask a specific question. It's a good opportunity to ask you a question. I'm currently doing research with Mr. Anam, especially in stroke rehabilitation robot using artificial intelligence-based AMG signal. I read several journals about AMG4 robot, and the journals I read said that AMG is a complex signal. My question is, what important factor need to be considered in processing AMG signal so that this signal can be useful for moving the robot? Thank
Okay,
you.
that's very technical, and I'll give you a technical answer. Number one, you want to have as many sensors as possible. So I showed you examples in which we had 8. The woman without a hand was operating the prosthesis with using only 6. But if I could have 100, I would be happier. The problem is if you have 100, you run into trouble miniaturizing the whole thing. I mean, we're getting there. This is a technological problem, actually, yes. This is a typical technological problem. So miniaturizing, reading EMG from 100 sensor. And a second could be filtering plays a big part. Filtering is really problematic. So you need to take away, so you really need to isolate the information you're not interested in. And that goes a long way because there's a lot of motion artifacts. It has to do with the physical interface to the skin as well. That's a problem. Our experience is that we can simply use the rectified values. If you have many sensors with rectified values and with a strong low-pass filter, then you probably get some delay in the response, but the signal is very stable. It will tell you exactly what I want to do, and it will tell you, and it will detect your intent, say, exactly for the right amount of time. So, in the end, it could be simpler than we expect. I think there was someone over there.
Yeah, let me introduce myself. My name is Yusuf from engineering faculty. I will ask a basic question, I guess. AI will work better when human can use it well, but I guess human and AI have different basic language barrier. Then, should we, as fresh graduate in engineering student fresh graduate, learn coding, programming, and those kind of things? Because I will work as engineering approximately in industry 20 to 30 years. And AI development is become faster and faster. So should I learn the programming and coding? Yeah, thank you.
I'm not sure I understand. What is the question then?
And the question is, should we, as fresh graduate, as engineering student, learn programming?
So what I want to ask is that the programming, shall we need to learn all of it, or we just need to learn the programming for what we need? Because human language and AI language is different.
Okay. My personal view on the university is that university shouldn't give you too much of a specific education, right? It should still give you the possibility of learning a lot of different things, and then so that and having you face a lot of different problems. So when you go to your company because you get hired, they give you something to solve and you never saw it, you never seen it in your life. So you don't know how to attack it, but you know where to look for the solutions, at least. Now to get a little more concrete, do we need to learn? So this is about programming languages, really, is it? No, I don't think so. I mean, as a mathematician, so I did my PhD in maths. All languages are equivalent, more or less. So you can use, I mean, we use C#, we can use Python, we can use C++. I don't see the big difference. It's more about, there's something I might quickly show you. It's not in this presentation. What's the best way here? There's something I wrote years ago in a paper, and I must say I'm still proud of what I wrote. That'll be bibliography. It's a paper I published in 2016, I think, Novak, right? There you go. So we tried to do some investigation in psychology for this kind of interactions. And since the readers were psychologists. They don't really. I'm not sharing. Sorry. Let me share the screen again. Otherwise, the people in Zoom will not read anything. So, as an introduction to this paper, we wrote what is machine learning, right? So, indeed, machine learning is an explicit program, so it's something you have to program into. Whoops, sorry. So it's a bunch of code in C# for us. But then the interesting point is a program that observes statistical regularities in the world. Let me magnify this a little bit. And matches them against one another. So what you need to have is your program needs to be able to see something, say a pattern in your signals, and match that pattern to something it has seen in the past. Now it's a programming problem, so you can solve it in C#, in Python, in Java, in anything. But it doesn't make a big difference. This is the big characteristic you want to enforce. The fact that, and this is a little bit like we humans work, or take animals, so they match what they see with something they've seen in the past, and then they react according to the successful strategy they had. This is really very similar to this one. And that's stuff that the psychologists say, and I'm glad that I could somehow bring that knowledge into my papers here. This is a paper that didn't have so much of a success, I have to say, because engineers think it's too abstract and psychologists think it's too concrete. So to answer your question, no, you don't need to learn all the programming languages, definitely. One of them or two of them will do the trick, I believe.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry because of our lack of time. I think we need to close the question and answer session. So, a little bit for me to give a conclusion and take home note for this talk is that AI is an approximation function, which is a mathematical procedure mostly about cost function, where it uses a huge set of data to answer a problem, but AI in medical is not just that. Applying AI in medicine, in medical, is very hard, because the robot or machine needs to work with people such as patient, doctor, therapist, surgeon, and everyone else, and also need to understand what they want and need quickly and precisely. We need to have the operator or the people itself and the robot and the machine to have a tight connection, which is hard, but possibly can be solved through time. With time, we need both the AI system and the operator, if I can so to adapt with each other in time. And the last is working in medical robotics is a collaborative work between a lot of people, not just engineer. We need to go to the doctors and patient and everyone else. I think that's all. And
you did
please,
a great job. Thank you very much.
Please give a round of applause for our presenters. Thank you for everyone, and I return back to the MC.
Thank you so much.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Agung selaku moderator. Sesi terakhir adalah penutupan. Sebelum kita tutup bersama, saya dan rekan MC pembawa acara pertemuan hari ini memohon maaf yang sebesar-besarnya apabila ada tutur kata yang kurang berkenan di hati Bapak atau Ibu serta seluruh hadirin sekalian dalam program World Class Professor hari ini.
Well, thank you to Mr. Agung, our moderator. The final session is the closing. Before we conclude together, we as the MC of today's event would like to offer our sincere apologies if any of our words have unintentionally caused a discomfort to Mr., Mrs., or all the participants of the World Class Professor program today.
Kami selaku MC pamit undur diri.
As today's master of ceremony and alongside my fellow hosts, we'd like to say our goodbyes.
Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.